Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the QRL Show, the place where you come for the crypto and stay for the quantum. On today's episode, my co-host Michael Strike and I are having our latest Dev QRL AMA with QRL lead blockchain developer Kumar Singh. Kaushal, Michael, it's good to be with you both, and thanks for joining us, Kaushal.
Hi, thanks for another opportunity to have it with you guys.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you with us on the show, and we kind of, for those watching in the audience, we had an AMA a couple months ago where Michael and I went through a ton of questions, and Kushal, you really filled us in with everything that's happening on the development side. So today's episode, it's a build, a progression on that, and we're just going to go through kind of a list of questions, a couple of our own, a number from the community that we pulled in recent days. And if it's good with you, Kushal, I'm going to kind of start out with the first one, and then Michael and I will go back and forth with some different questions and covering everything from Zon to how people in the community can get involved on the development side. A lot of questions, some big, some small, some around timelines and progress. But if that works for you, Kushal, we could just jump right into the first one.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. Well, the first one I'm going to read, this is a community question. We'll start here and then we'll go back and forth. The first one is I watched the last AMA Ryan and Mike did with Kushal. I enjoyed it. And since that AMA you guys did back in April, what has progress been like? And what stage are we at in terms of timelines and how do things look from here? That's the first community question. Take it away, Kushal.
Yeah. So in terms of progress, so we are going through the codes with the existing code, and there was lots of things where we found that is no more required. So we spent a lot of time in the code cleanup because there were lots of existing codes which were related to proof of work, and as we have derived our code from Ethereum and the Prismatic Labs itself. So that has to be reviewed. So we reviewed them and we removed all of them which are not required. So I think at this point of time, we have most of the codes removed. If there would be a few remaining, then that's a different matter. But if there exists some, then they will be removed too. Other than that, we have commenced our progress with the implementation of XMSs into the JavaScript library. So we already have a pull request, which is still being reviewed because we have to do a couple of refactoring. So in the crypto.js library, which has basically the cryptography parts like dilithium and XMSs. So dilithium was already implemented, but in after April we have worked on XMSs, so it's there. Other than that, we have started making progress with the Chrome extension wallet, which would be very much similar to that of MetaMask, and that would help us with our Solidity compiler that we will be using, so that people can create apps and they can interact with this Chrome extension based wallet, which will be very much similar to that of MetaMask, and we are going to expose APIs so that tab developers will not have much of an issue on building something on the Zond. So that is in progress. It is not yet finished. We are expecting that it should be done by the end of December. So we should have a well polished Chrome extension wallet. And other than that, it's like, so we are also reviewing the critical parts, which is the block reward. So in proof of work, the giving reward was much easier just because at the end of the day, whenever a block is mined, it's just only one miner who has mined that block is going to receive that reward. But in the proof of stake, because there are lots of validators, one who is creating the block known as block proposer, and there are several other who are attesting that block, which gives a proof that that block was created in a given specific time. So there are lots of validators who deserves reward, and for this we are planning the reward like how do we compute how much reward should be given at a specific block number and at a specific epoch. And at the same time we have to make sure that because in the QRL we have a limited supply, so unlike Ethereum where the supply is not limited, it's unlimited, we have to change this algorithm and make sure that we meet the requirement, which is to not use all the rewards so that we hit up the full total supply within a specific timeline, which I believe was around 105 years based on the current algorithm. So we have to adjust that reward to something like that. But at the same time, we have to also make sure that reward doesn't go so low that it becomes infeasible for anyone to have any interest or profit with the staking. So we have to take care of all of these things. So yeah, we are working on that. So yeah, it's in progress. And along with this, now coming to the timeline which you have asked is like we have thought that we will be able to wrap up at least from the consensus protocol side, which is the most critical because that is something we don't want to keep on changing much. So at least at that point of time, and lots of uh, apps like the Chrome extension wallet, which will be similar to MetaMask, which I mentioned. So those things, I think we will be able to wrap up most of our development by the January or February or the mid February 2025, and that means we could start the audit in between. Like we don't need to wait for audit for all the things to be finished because there are a few things that would be finished before January, especially the cryptography JavaScript library, cryptography's Golang library, and the MetaMask like wallet. So couple of things audit may start before January, but the main code, the consensus algorithm, that's audit will start somewhere around Feb.
Kaushal, you have such a calm and collected way of describing things that I want to point out some of the really exciting stuff that you said. And you said that we're going to have a MetaMask extension, right? And it's going to, I mean, excuse me, it's a MetaMask like wallet. It'll operate
Yeah.
similar to that, but it's also going to be integrated. It'll be integrated in the browser like MetaMask, but at the same time, you'll be able to deploy Ethereum Solidity, essentially code on our blockchain with while having to make certain tweaks to the code, right? Like addressing or whatever differences there are in the DSA. So, could you talk a little bit more? Could you talk a little bit more about how the MetaMask and the Solidity compatibility is going to streamline the user experience in a way that they're already familiar with. For example, a lot of people that use it, almost everyone that I know that uses Ethereum uses MetaMask. Can you talk about how we're streamlining that quantum code onto our chain and making it as easy as possible? Because that's one of the biggest things I think in the blockchain space today is having a user experience that is actually smooth and inviting.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, just because of that, to make sure that the user experience for any developer who is building on the Solidity or who has worked before in the Ethereum on building any kind of decentralized applications. So to keep the user experience very much similar to that of with the Zon, we have decided to have this very much similar to MetaMask wallet in the Chrome extension. So how is that going to happen? Is most of the time when you have your dApp running and you have to interact with those decentralized applications, you have to maybe you have to pay some fees, pay some gas fees to have, let's say if it's a DEX where you actually do trading, then you have to have the MetaMask wallet, something which makes very much easier for people to have a trade using the wallet or to do something like that. So because the MetaMask has a very great UI, so we have thought that if we can have something like that, because this is something which will make they are already familiar with the Ethereum ecosystem. So when they are already familiar with the ecosystem, then it would not take much time for them to migrate to the Zond blockchain, where things would be very much similar as much as we can keep it. Of course, there are a few things which we can't keep similar in terms of cryptography and the signature size and all those things, but we are trying our best to keep it similar so that the migration from one blockchain to another blockchain always requires the lower, the you don't need to do lots of things, you don't need to learn lots of jargon. So we want to keep that pain as much as low as possible. So with that in the mind, the UI part of it, we are trying to keep it very much similar to that, so you don't find a lots of things. Like what happens when you shift from one software to another software, you find lots of things has changed. The buttons are not here, the settings are different, and all those things. So we are also having the plan to keep all of them very much similar to that of the MetaMask. So you're already familiar with that, so you don't need to spend lots of time learning this new things. In terms of changes, there would be small. It's like Solidity compiler. There would be few opcodes which would be a bit different. So these are not very generally used opcodes. I mean, most of the opcodes will remain same, but it's like there are few opcodes which gives you some information related to the cryptography. And because in Ethereum it's an ECDSA cryptography, in our case it's a post quantum cryptography. So those opcode would change a bit, but those opcode are not something which is used in general. Another opcode which is going to change is the address, because in Ethereum the address size is of, uh, as far as I remember, it's 48 bytes, something like that. I have to check. Oh, sorry, it's 20 bytes. Yeah, so it's 20 bytes. So in that case, and it's in hexadecimal, but based on the QIP that we had from Robier and that we all agreed, is like we are going to change that address format, and the size would be a different. So that address opcode will become different too. But other than that, most of the codes, if I say, at least 95% to 98% of the things would remain same, and it's just 1 or 2% of the things that would change, but that should not matter a lot, just because those 1 or 2% changes are not the that is very commonly used in the decentralized applications. It is used in very few cases, but if that's used, then okay, we will have a great documentation to make sure that of that. And we will also make a simple documentation which will show you a direct difference between what you what difference you should expect from a Solidity to the Zond version of Solidity, so that you don't need to go through several pages. It will be just one single page. You go into that, you can see, okay, this opcode is different in Zond, this specific thing is works different in the Zond, and in that way we are trying to make things easier for the community.
So here's what I heard is if I am a altcoin running on the Ethereum network, I'll be able to take my smart contract code, tweak it to make it QRL blockchain compatible, post quantum secure, and I'll be able to take that smart contract and deploy it on a blockchain that is provably quantum computer secure and based on government recommended digital signature algorithms that show that are post quantum secure, and that has been doing this since Genesis for 6 years. I'll be able to take that contract and put it on a proven quantum secure blockchain.
Yeah, that's true.
You can duplicate
And
your project.
Yeah. So it's that
that's true.
interoperability question
Yeah.
that we got a ton at in recent conferences. A lot of people asking on that of being a really important thing that they want to know on. So covers exactly.
If you're an altcoin, take your contract code, tweak it like Kaushal's talking about, drop it on our chain, and there's your quantum secure backup. If you're ERC20 project or
Yeah.
What about the NFTs, things like that? Could people possibly port NFTs from Ethereum to our blockchain?
Well, yes, and most
Yeah.
important thing is they might not have to make any changes with that. So in my case, I think believe most of the NFTs can be directly migrated to the Zond without making any single change in their smart contract. But yeah, if they have something running with the UI side, because they in the UI, usually people use Web3.js library, built, which is the Ethereum version. So they need to change that Web3.js library to the version of Web3.js library that we have released. And even there, they will find lots of things are similar, except the cryptography part is a bit different. But otherwise, in contract side, you don't need to change anything. The contract will remain same.
So this is a big deal,
Yeah.
guys. You'll be able to run these EVMs on our chain as a potential insurance policy against quantum computers. So if you're an altcoin project and people ask you the question, what are you doing about post quantum secure cryptography? If you have anything on Ethereum, even if that data is quantum secure wrapped around XMS, it's still not quantum secure if it's on Ethereum. But what you could tell your customers is that we are also running on the QRL blockchain as a backup using the same smart contract. So to me, that's very powerful. I'll ask the next question.
Yeah, I think maybe Strike, you can go in any order. I think one that would be good now that we're on
Yeah.
this topic right now is maybe touch on the new developers and getting involved and contributing. I think that would be
Okay.
a good one to segue into, because I think this is one that someone else asked another AMA question on this. I'll just read out the question, but someone had a question in the Google form that we took from Discord. They said, "I'm a new developer from our community, or like I'm in the QRL community," and they had a similar question about getting involved. So start with that one, Strike, and then we'll continue on down the list.
Yeah, so I believe that's how can new developers get involved in contributing to the QRL project and start writing their own quantum secure code in Solidity. So if they already have code, they might not need to write it, but what do they need to know if they want to start writing Solidity code now that's compatible with our
Yeah.
version?
So as we already have this QRL testnet in public, so we already have the example in a GitHub repository, which is Zond contract example. So this Zond contract example has the smart contract, which is basically a simple ERC20 token code. In that repository, it also using Web3.js library, which we have built. So using that Web3.js library, you can deploy the smart contract. You can interact with the smart contract both off chain or on chain. So from off chain is like if you have an ERC20 token, you want to check balance, like what's the balance of a specific address for that specific ERC20 token. So that's usually an off-chain transaction because you don't need to pay anything. You can do that using the Web3.js library that we have, and we already have that example in public. And the on-chain, like if you want to transfer your ERC20 token from your to someone else, so you can do that transaction too. And we have already given that as an example in that same repository, which is the Zond contract example. And using that, you can have a rough idea, like okay, how I can build a smart contract, deploy it, and interact with it. We also have this cryptography library already written in JavaScript, which is in the crypto.js, and the wallet library, which is wallet.js, which is in our repository, and it is also released with the npm package. So if anyone working with the npm, they can directly have that as a dependency and use that. So all of this will help you to build the wallet and all of those things. But what we don't have at this point of time is the Chrome extension, like the MetaMask wallet. So that part, for that specific part, they have to wait. But other than that, we have all the basics things so that they don't need to wait. They can develop their backend part at this point of time with, and whatever changes that we come up in the future, so they don't have to like work too hard to change that, because whatever changes that would come, that would be reflected into the existing JavaScript libraries like crypto.js and the wallet.js and all of them. So all they have to do is to upgrade the versions, and I doubt there will be any severe changes, but other than that, they can start developing. And if they get any kind of questions, like during the development, if they find something that this is missing, I don't know how to do that, they can always send us an email or directly contact us on Discord. So we are always available. We will try our best to help them.
No, perfect. They covered that really nicely. I think this is going to overlap a little bit with the earlier question, but I'll just I'll ask the different angle a little bit just to see if there's anything more to add to it. There's two more community questions that were kind of about current Zon development progress, and they're just kind of curious if everything's moving along as expected. I know in 2 questions ago, you already kind of gave us a timeline, kind of an idea of what to look for come end of year, come January, Q1 of next year. Is there anything else you'd like the community to know in terms of development progress? It's moving along as intended. Is there anything else big or notable you want them to know in terms of what's been going on in recent months? I just saw a couple questions, so I figured if there's anything else to add to the void there.
Yeah, I mean, most of the things I already shared, which is the MetaMask like wallet, and the next thing is most probably by the next month we will start making or finalizing changes with the reward and the penalty algorithm, because most of the codes and how it's going to affect the whole ecosystem, because we have already reviewed that. So we have few things with the fee, like how much should be the fee, how much should be the penalty, all of those. We are going to start working on that from the next month, and most probably we will get it finished, at least the reward and penalty thing, by the end of the next month, which would be a critical thing. And then we will move towards, the plan is to move towards the implementation of XMS's wallet into all the ecosystem, because right now it's only dilithium. You can stake with the dilithium, and you can uh, transfer funds and all of those using the dilithium, but XMSS is not yet implemented. And as we discussed, that XMSS will only be playing role in normal blockchain ecosystem, but it will not be allowed to do the staking because of the limitations in the number of available keys to make transaction. So yeah, so after this reward and penalty is finished by the end of next month, then we will start this whole cryptography part. Make sure that XMSS is fully in and restricted not to do the staking. Once that two thing is done, then the last, I think, the last and the critical part would be to change the address format. That's the whole idea, and I'm not seeing any major roadblocker which we should be worried about, because it's nothing as a roadblocker. But yeah, we have to make sure that whatever changes we are doing, how it's going to impact this large amount of code. We don't want to have any unknown area. That's why we are going through each code line by line, making sure that we totally understand what we are doing. So yeah, that's
Perfect. Thank you for covering that, Kaushal. Appreciate it. Michael, I'll port it over to you. I know we have a couple more questions to go back and forth on. Continue us on with the next one, Michael.
Yeah, so I was thinking while you were talking that for those that don't know, Vitalik released a statement on how to secure against a post-quantum against a quantum computer attack. And the first step in trying to remediate the problem is to roll back the blockchain, and that's a terrifying prospect for any blockchain project. One of the things that made Bitcoin novel was its immutability and the ability to know that once something, the confidence of knowing that something is, once the transaction is complete, that it is actually complete after a certain number of confirmations. So I was thinking to myself just now that if we're implementing proof, since we're going to be implementing proof of stake soon, and my next question will be, Kaushal, like, what are the new features going into Zond? But I was thinking to myself that if Ethereum needs a roadmap upgrade to quantum secure, it could just be QRL. They could. It'll probably. I'm certain that people
Well,
have
at QRL.org,
Yeah, I mean, if they want to, we could be the upgrade, and that something like that's possible. That could happen if enough enough altcoins migrate on over to us, just as a precautionary operational from a precautionary operational aspect. Yeah, that's entirely possible. So exciting times. 2025 is going to be a really interesting year for this project. With that being said, since I'm talking about 2025 and I'm talking about the Zond upgrade, we've talked about some of the features, Kaushal. Can you just, without going into a lot of detail about each one, can you kind of list off what those
Yeah.
features are from the consensus mechanism to having multiple DSAs running for XMSS, dilithium kyber? Can you just list off what those features are so people can know what to expect when we released our Zond upgrade next year?
Okay. So the first thing, of course, it's going to be proof of stake in terms of consensus mechanism instead of proof of work. And the second thing is we are going to have a new cryptography wallet, which is dilithium, which doesn't exist in our proof of work node right now. So dilithium is going to give an enormous advantage because with the dilithium, you can have an unlimited signatures, unlike XMSS where you have a limited number of keys. But yeah, so that's it. And with the dilithium, it's the dilithium 5. We are using the latest version of dilithium 5 as a cryptography. So yeah, it's the most, it's of highest security, and we are following the NIST standards. So it's the topmost dilithium version available. But at the same time, we are also making sure to have our signature structure and the address structure in such a way that in case if in future any efficient and any new quantum cryptography comes up, we can always add that into our address scheme without breaking the whole lot of code. So that's with that in our mind, we have made the address format in that way, and we are also making sure that the consensus algorithm and all those smart contracts will have that feature to differentiate between different cryptographies libraries. So other than that feature is the smart contract, which of course doesn't exist in our current node. So we have the Zond, which is already with the smart contract, and the smart contract feature is already live in the Zond testnet, which is already in public, which is being used by people. And with that, which is already mentioned, is another Chrome extension wallet, which will be very much similar to MetaMask to make it easier for them to interact with the decentralized applications. Lots of libraries, and so with lots of libraries, it's like crypto.js, which is basically just the cryptography libraries, which will include all the post quantum cryptographies that we are using in our wallet. Then we have the wallet.js, which is basically the wallet library, which is using the crypto.js for the cryptography part, but the crypto.js doesn't have the wallet implementation, like how do you generate the address, how do you get the address format. So all of that code part, we have made that separate inside the wallet.js. And yeah, so these are the features that we have for now. And of course the remix id, which is also in the plan, that we will release our own version of remix id, because we will have a different Solidity compiler because of the change in the opcode. So we will have our own Solidity compiler as well as the uh, remix id, where you can write your Solidity code and you can compile there. So the whole id will give you a complete different experience to make sure that whatever you are writing and all those debugging, everything that you can do there. So yeah, these are all the features and the plans for the Zond.
So we're going to be running. We'll be running multiple digital signature algorithms. We'll have XMS. We're going to retain XMS hash-based backward compatibility, and also dilithium statefulness, right? And if you want to be able to run proof of stake, you'll have to be running dilithium, correct? As your signature wallet type for now. So the difference here is, I get asked this question a lot about Bitcoin. Can't Bitcoin just hard fork? And if you go through all the processes and things in order to figure out if that can work, Bitcoin can hard fork, but they will never be able to migrate all of the Bitcoin over to a post quantum secure DSA. So in other words, I have to be running the old DSA on Bitcoin plus a brand new DSA, and you've got to use this old DSA and then migrate your Bitcoin to another addressing scheme, and then you have to get everyone to do it. Otherwise, you'll eventually lose coins because eventually this DSA, which is not quantum secure, has to be deprecated and shut down. And when that shuts down, number one, hopefully that's before a quantum computer has already compromised the blockchain. And second of all, you're not going to get everybody. So that's a question that I get quite a bit. So the difference is with Bitcoin trying to go post quantum secure versus us being post quantum secure. All of our DSAs are post quantum secure since the first block. We've never had a transaction on the network that used elliptical curve cryptography that could be compromised by a sufficiently powerful quantum computer. So I just wanted to bring that differentiator out there that other projects, as they try and go post quantum secure, are going to have to build in these additional DSAs or cryptographic signature algorithms. And at some point, they have to deprecate the old one because that old one is an open front door to a sufficiently powerful quantum computer. So I wanted to throw that in here as we were talking about running multiple DSAs. A lot of other projects will say that yes, we're post quantum secure because we have our post quantum secure DSA. But if you've got another DSA that is not post quantum secure that allow you to interact with the blockchain, then you're not really post quantum secure because I can just use this other DSA. Or if you've got funds sitting in the wallet that use an ECC address or a public key, asymmetric public key cryptography, those aren't safe because a public key could be a private key could be derived from a public key with a sufficiently powerful quantum computer. So we're running multiple DSAs. Other projects are going to be running multiple DSAs. That is not to be confused with one of your DSAs. Where's my figure? There it is. One of those DSAs being quantum secure and the other three are not, whereas we have all quantum secure DSAs. So I thought that was an important point. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with that. I mean, it's true that they can do the hard fork, but at the end of the day, you cannot make 100% sure that everyone has migrated. That, of course, is going to happen. And if that happens, then there will be a lots of wallet which will always remain vulnerable to the quantum computers. So yeah, I agree with that part. And it's like with and another thing is including quantum cryptographies are not that simple as that of ECDSA, because when you integrate them you are going to face some new challenges. Like if you have something like XMSs, then you have to think about how do you maintain the state of that XMSs cryptography to make sure what OTS indices has already been used. If you are using the stateless like dilithium, it's fine, but then you are already having a new challenge with both XMS and dilithium, which is a bigger signature size. So there are lots of things going to play the role, and a bigger signature size means every time you get a transaction, you are going to have a bigger block size, which means you have to make sure that your block size limit is well enough to cover the same number of transactions that you were covering with ECDSA, and now it's the post quantum. So there are lots of things that are going to change. Everything from P2P to state maintenance to everything. But at the end of the day, you cannot make sure that everyone has migrated from a non-post quantum cryptography to the post quantum cryptography.
So to let me ask a question then. Of all the different types of hard fork that a project might have to do, can you think of one that's more difficult than going post quantum secure? Some type of hard fork. Can you think of one that's more difficult? That would be more difficult.
Mostly, I think that would be with someone having a kind of code in the logic, like the smart contract or something that runs on that, because with the new cryptography, and as you are not going to support the old cryptography, there exist lots of smart contract which has some kind of address, some kind of, sometimes they have the hard coded address to define the owner, something like that. And because those address has been generated with the non post quantum signature scheme, and if and because they are hard coded, in that case, if you shift, then that will require the dApp to have some kind of very new smart contract. So these are going to be very much difficult, I believe. Or any contract that they have which is based on time dependent. It's like if there is something that I put my money or my coins or token into a specific smart contract with a time lock that after these many years it will unlock my specific NFTs or something to this given address, but that given address was generated at that point of time when your blockchain doesn't support the post quantum signature. So of course that address itself is not post quantum. So and when the time lock ends, and if that ends after the post quantum event has already taken place, then your finances are on trouble because that will release to that specific address and it will be like a
So
race condition.
so that is really interesting in that I talk to a lot of people that they know that Bitcoin has value and they want to make sure it has value, continues to have value in 10 years. So I'm going to lock my Bitcoin for 10 years and that it can't be touched. If
Yeah.
Bitcoin hard forks within that 10 years, they go through a DSA transition and they implement land port signatures or something. You have a certain amount of time to migrate your funds over. But if your funds are locked until a certain point in time, you know the answer. What happens to
Yeah.
those funds that you locked in order to stay secure? What happens when Bitcoin hard forks and you're not able to access the funds in order to transition them over? What happens?
It's going to be a mess unless some kind of centralized decision is taken. But otherwise, it's going to be a mess because it's very hard for someone to make changes to a new one.
It would be like all of your Bitcoin gets transferred into Bitcoin Cash, a fork of Bitcoin, while everyone else goes a different way.
Yeah, it's going to be a very odd situation. It's like because that exists in the non-post quantum thing. So even if you have made a post quantum fork, that should also exist in that blockchain. And if that's true, then the one who have the access to the quantum computer, they would have pre-scanned whole blockchain for all the time lock contracts, and they will keep an eye. As soon as they get unlocked, their first attempt would be to attack and to get that as
Assuming they couldn't, assuming there wasn't some sort of automated mechanism to take a locked Bitcoin and automatically duplicate it on the chain as part of the new hard fork or something like that. Anyway, the point of all of this is as far as hard forks go, going post quantum secure is if not one of the top two or three hardest types of forks to do. And it's type of fork that hardly anybody has experience with.
Yeah, I think one I want to port over to. I have two questions, community ones I want to jump to, and we can just go to them in order. The first one you briefly touched on earlier, Kaushal, in terms of the process of when an audit would take place. Could you touch briefly on what audit plans exist for Zond? This is a direct community question. This is the first of two that I have. So, what audit plans exist for Zond?
yeah. So for the audit plans, we have to audit everything, including the cryptography library that has been implemented both in Golang and JavaScript. And we have to also get the Chrome extension wallet that we are developing similar to MetaMask that has to be audited. The compiler code that we are going to modify, the Solidity compiler code, that has to be audited. Then we have the remix ID that also has to be audited, and the most critical part is the consensus algorithm, which we have in the Beacon node, and the Zond, which is the execution engine. So these two also has to be executed, but all of the audit will not start at the same time because we believe crypto.js library and the cryptography library both in JavaScript and the Golang will be finished uh, before the node. So we will start having the audit for that initially, so that meanwhile they are getting audited, we are going to finish our pending tasks into the beacon chain and the execution engine. And once they are done, then the final would be this beacon node and this engine. And meanwhile, we will get everything like the crypto.js, Solidity compiler, and the remix ID, all of them get audited with the auditors. So we are hoping to at least have two audits for both Zond, and which is the execution engine, and the beacon chain, which is Chrism. So we want to have at least two auditors who is going to do audit both of them. So it's like not one audit, two audits for both of them. For other non-critical parts, it's fine to have one auditors because they are not very much critical, but still good to have audited.
Perfect. So doubly audited for critical, audited very
Yeah.
thoroughly for the others. Thanks for answering that one. One question, another one from the community. Recent hot off the press from the community. I just actually pulled this one. Jack and our team pulled this one in. How will scaling be addressed? This is obviously a topic that people have strong opinions sometimes on what methods might be best. But could you touch on how scaling is going to be addressed just a little bit, and then I'll port it back over to Strike to kind of wrap out our round of AMA questions.
Yes. So for the scaling, we have to understand, because we are in a post-quantum cryptography, which is still lacking some kind of research in the cryptographic community. It's like if I talk about ECDSA, which is non-post quantum cryptography, they have everything for the scaling. Like they have aggregation. You can aggregate multiple signatures into a small pack, and you can just verify that aggregated signature, which is much smaller in size. And that way, that is a one way to do the scaling. But things like that doesn't exist in the post quantum cryptography. So it doesn't exist now, but I'm pretty much sure that it will exist in future, because the research in the cryptography community is in progress. But only thing that we need is the time. It's a growing time, so it's a growing thing. So it will take some time. It's not going to come very much quickly, but that's one thing. Other part of the aggregation is, which I believe is going to play a big role, is the zero knowledge proof. So again, in the non-post quantum uh, side, if you look into, then we already have a ZK snark, which is zero knowledge proof. You can have a mathematical computation. You can store the proof instead of storing the whole transaction signatures, and that proof you can verify anytime in the future or any point of time, and you can see that okay, these addresses actually made the transaction. So basically, you don't need to store lots of signatures. All you have to do is store one single proof that is verifiable. That is available as in form of ZK star for the non-post quantum cryptography, but for the post quantum cryptography, we have ZK star zero knowledge proof, but that star, it's post quantum, but we still have to uh, look into this, because with with the zero knowledge proof, with especially with the ZK star, there comes a special requirement or condition, which means it works well only with the things that use ZK compatible mathematical operations. So what happens in the trivial cryptography? We have operations like XOR or these kinds of bitwise operators, but ZK star doesn't work with the bitwise operators. So it works with mathematical operations like plus, minus, multiplication, division, something like that. But in cryptography, we use everything, like even the bitwise operators. So if your cryptography has the bitwise operators, right now ZK star doesn't work with that, and that's what a point where it blocks us. It's like because dilithium and XMSs, they have lots of bitwise operators in it, and because they have that, we cannot generate a ZK star proof at this point of time unless we get a new research or something like that, which can be compatible. But yeah, if we can get the ZK star done, then we can have a great amount of scalability. But this is something that is our next priority. Once we release the Zond, uh, then our next priority is to look into how we can do the scale. That would take years. Of course, we have to look into how the quantum cryptography community is working on, what kind of research is going to come on. Because if you will look into the time when we actually released the proof of work, at that point of time, there was nothing like a dilithium. It may be an idea, but was not standardized by NIST. It took several years, like I believe 2 or 3 years, for NIST to maybe a more for to standardize that. But during that time, the dilithium has evolved. Dilithium in 2018 there was a different version of dilithium. Today it's dilithium 5. So it's like
And it will continue to
multiple
evolve more and
versions.
more.
Yeah. So the point is, the version that we are using now is something that we can actually vouch for. We are pretty much sure that it is very much strong because it has been reviewed by NIST and multiple standardization has been done. The same thing is going to happen with the scalability thing. Which we need is aggregation and the zero knowledge proof. It will take some time for this to get standardized. Maybe it happens that a new cryptography, a post-quantum cryptography comes up in between, which would be very much compatible with the zero knowledge proof. In that case, we can include this new cryptography and take the advantage of zero knowledge proof to have the scalability. But all of this will take time. So once the Zond is released, that's the next thing that we have to look into that.
Thanks for covering that one.
Yes.
Now, Michael, back over to you. I think that almost rounds it out with
Pretty
my
close.
question.
I just want to have one other question. Okay, I'll play the persona of a community member that highly believes in the project, and I want to be able to stake. How much quanta will I need as a minimum in order to do proof of stake once we hard fork? Has that been set? I think it was set. I'm not entirely sure, but worth mentioning again.
Yeah, so we have mentioned that as 40,000 QRL. So that's already been a criteria, I believe, in the testnet that we have released. Till now, we haven't seen any, like we haven't decided to make any changes with that, whether we want to reduce or increase that. But at least at this point of time, if you ask me, if I release the Zond today, then it will remain 40,000 QRL as a requirement to stake. But that doesn't mean that you will be stopped by staking if you have less than 40,000 QRL, because then comes a new concept which already exists in Ethereum, which is called staking pool, where third party creates the smart contract which takes minimum amount of whatever you contribute on that. Then it creates a share kind of thing, and then it stakes using that, and the reward is shared based on how much you contributed.
So
So
a bit like nominated proof of stake, except run off
yeah,
a smart
kind of
contract
that.
instead, right? It's kind of like
Yeah.
a retrofit, which the project won't be implementing that from a consensus mechanism, but someone could write a smart contract or port one from Ethereum and then create staking pools that way. So if you want to self stake, then you'll need 40,000 QRL. That's about 8,000 USD right now. I think 8,000 USD.
Yeah,
If you
as
want to
we're
be able to
watching, it'll ebb and flow, but roughly, yeah.
yeah. So that's good to know. That is all I have.
Yeah, no,
That
same
was all
here.
the community has.
Yeah, I think just as a last question, Kaushal, I know you've covered quite a lot in our AMA today here. Any other, top of mind resources as a place to start? I know you already mentioned within your questions. If anyone has questions as they're, getting involved, wanting to contribute, jump into our Discord. They can send us an email. We're more than responsive in terms of that as from the core team. Anything else you'd like to let those viewing this, whether they're, a veteran of the QRL project, been around the block for a while, or maybe they're brand new? Anything else in your mind that you'd like to let them know? I know we filled them in extremely thoroughly on current dev progress, but maybe as a starting point, as they've watched this and maybe they're ready to get their toes wet, or jump all the way in the deep end if they're ready.
Yeah, I mean, we have already got most of the thing, but anything else that if they want, it's like they can keep a track of how the development is taking progress. They can look into the documentation, whatever we have right now, and we have lots of libraries. If they want to be ahead from others, they can try out our cryptography libraries, both written in Golang and JavaScript, to make sure that when they actually want to develop that decentralized applications, they already know lots of things that is already available in the ecosystem, so it will be easier for them to start. And if they have some idea, something like that they want to build right now on the testnet, even if we do not have everything to cover the ecosystem, we can help them what could be the best possible way for them to move forward to implement their idea with the existing testnet. And we can also help them with the when the actual or the finalized version of libraries comes up, then how they can migrate with the changes. So yeah, that's all we can do for them.
Great. Well, as always, Kaushal, thank you very much for joining Michael and I. We not only enjoy having these conversations that are front facing to the community, but it's nice to be able to bring light to all the development progress. I know Michael and I, the rest of our team, are in the weekly dev meetings, and we're seeing the inner workings of everything that you and the development team are working on. But it's always really nice and refreshing to be able to continue bringing it to light so that the community's privied on it as well. So. First off, thank you for hopping on with us. Again, we'll do another one of these coming up, and later this year as we continue progressing further and further along. For those watching, make sure if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe bell below so you can be up to date with the latest on our QRL show. And as always, make sure to have a great rest of the week and keep those digital assets post-quantum secure. Thanks, Kaushal. See you, Strike.
Thank you.